Hola, buenos dias. Welcome to the Paragliding XC Stories. Continuing on my XC Guide series, today we are in sunny Colombia in Roldanillo. This is probably the best place to fly XC in January and February.
So, if you are thinking about traveling to Roldanillo for XC flying, you might find this video useful, as I will explain how to fly this big, challenging, but incredibly fascinating 185-kilometer triangle in Valle del Cauca. I am not going to tell you how beautiful Colombia is. Check out your favorite travel blogger for that. Instead, you will learn everything about the big FAI triangle that many want to master. I will take you to every important spot along the route, show you the possible options and alternatives, and in the last part of the video you will find 5 general tips for flying in Valle del Cauca that I think will help you successfully fly your big adventures. Oh, and if you want to ask more questions or even fly this route with me, I invite you to check my Telegram group, find the link in the description. There are 4 official takeoffs near Roldanillo. The most used are Los Tanques and Agua Panela. We will launch from Agua Panela and follow the ridges to the north. Passing the towns of La Unión, Toro and San Francisco, we arrive at the Ansermanuevo crossing. If you want to fly 200 kilometers and more, you'll have to cross and fly further north. For a 180-kilometer triangle, it's enough to set your turn point here. We fly back to Roldanillo on the same route and then continue south. Passing the town of Bolivar, we arrive at Trujillo. If you want to fly 150 kilometers, set your turn point here. But for our larger triangle, we need to fly south, directly into the jungle. We fly as far south as we dare and then get out of the jungle back into the Valle del Cauca. We cross the wide valley and fly towards the town Sevilla. If you want to fly 200 kilometers, you have to fly into the jungle again here. Our last task is to reach the town of Zarzal. Now, the shape of the triangle is like this for a reason. Sometime in the afternoon, a strong wind called El Pacifico will enter this region from the west. This means that we have to get out of the mountains here, because flying in this huge lee side will become dangerous. More on that later. If you want to fly something smaller, you can try 150 kilometers, 120 or 100. It's also possible to switch the valley side earlier, but these triangles are usually smaller. There are some restricted airspaces and some no landing zones in the area. Please familiarize yourself with them and update your flight instruments. But enough theory, grab a coffee, the next 20 minutes will be packed with information. So buckle up, we're taking off. You're not allowed to thermal right at the takeoff Agua Panela, so you'll have to fly around this ridge first. You can usually find a thermal here, but I often skip it. We fly over another smaller takeoff, El Pico. It's normally a great thermal spot, but for some reason not today. After waiting a bit, I fly directly towards the power line, which is another great thermal spot. Now make sure you stay above the power line. You don't want to get trapped here, and further east there is another power line that will be very difficult to avoid if you fly low. No landings in this area either. By the way, you can count the number of times I say power line in this video and post your number in the comments. We fly to the first key spot of the route. There's a good thermal here above the power line, and there's often a strong thermal a little away from the slope. This slope thermal tends to be really skewed, so keep an eye on the drift. Get as much altitude as possible. It's worth spending a bit more time here. Avoid starting the next crossing below 1900 meters MSL. This place is a bit tricky. You need to arrive above this spine. Don't fly this crossing too far to the right. You'll get more headwind and could sink into the morning stable air of the valley. In the best case scenario, you'll find a good line and make it right over the spine, but that's the rare exception. The most common solution to this puzzle is get to this slope right above the power line. There's a guaranteed thermal here, a little bumpy and rough, but we need it. Make some height and then get over the spine. A faster way, but one one that requires more attention is to just use the thermals over the slopes here and fly straight. In both cases, you'll have to get through a rough lee side of the strong thermals and some valley wind. And there's a power line here to make your life a little more spicy. So concentrate. If you mess up this spot, you'll probably experience something similar to what I once did. Watch my other video, the link is in the description. But today I'm lucky enough to get right over the spine and climb fast. This is the second big launch I mentioned, Los Tanques. If you take off here, you avoid the tricky crossing we just did, so you might consider this launch instead of Agua Panela. Avoid flying into this area, it's an ugly lee side with a power line right there. The thermal over this spine tends to be rough as well, but it usually shoots you up to cloud base quickly. I will skip it now to save some time. There is a very reliable eternal thermal over this peak and at these slopes. Use it. We could skip it, but there is a power line on these slopes, so flying low over the ridge as this pilot is doing is too much risk in my opinion. When you get close to the power line, it's better to escape to the right and fly towards this peak. There is a strong and reliable thermal, so no need to put yourself in danger. The Red Wing pilot makes a good decision and escapes before it's too late. These peaks and ridges are super active thermal triggers, so you won't have any trouble going up. Watch out for the power line and the wind. There can be a lot of drift here. This is the next key spot, climb up to the cloud base. From here we can take the safe route or the fast route. The safe route goes over the town of La Union to these slopes. Yes, there is a power line on the slope, but at least you will be on the sunny windward side, and there are a few landing spots near La Union. I usually prefer the fast route, flying towards this ridge. See this perfectly lit slope with very inviting terrain? Forget it, it never works. For some reason the thermals always come from the other side, so you have to fly over the ridge, not to the sunny slopes. It's worth spending a little more time here because the next area is a bit tricky. Fly to this small peak or this area right behind it. If you end up too low, you'll have to escape by flying against the wind over the difficult terrain without landings and crossing what? Yes, a power line. Check out my other video about this, I even had a wing collapse near the power line. Try to make cloud base here. We have to cross to this ridge, but there are no landings in this valley. And as if it was not bad enough, down below we have a power line crossing the valley. If you are not sure, look for a thermal in the middle of the crossing over this terrain. Usually there is one. Now I'm arriving very high here, this is super easy. Often you'll be below the ridge, which is fine as long as you are not too low. Check out my other video, how I escaped this area once when I was much lower. There's usually a very strong thermal in this area. From here you have two options, the safer one and the faster one. You can fly over this middle ridge, get to cloud base at its end and fly further north. The faster option is to fly to the left here. This very narrow valley has no good landing spots. There are a lot of cables everywhere and it's also quite windy down there. So only choose this route if you are high enough and can see the thermals working over this terrain. Now this is the mountain you get to when you fly over the middle ridge. This area creates a strong venturi, so you'll definitely lose the battle against the wind if you try to cross it low. Instead, look for a strong lee side thermal or get to the windward side and climb from there. I'm lucky enough to have some altitude reserve, so I quickly jump to the right side and continue north. We just passed the town of Toro and this slope is very weird. I really struggle to understand how it works, because most of the time I find thermals where I'd never expect them, or I get into a massive sink where I think there should be a good thermal. Here I was very lucky to bump into a thermal right away, but if you are much lower, look for lift in this area. From here you can fly over the high terrain or just straight below the clouds. Both options are usually similarly fast. The cloud base is not very high today, so I choose the clouds. You may be familiar with this area because I have a video about my risk management where I had to get out of this terrain low over a power line. I'll link it in the description. This area here is a rough lee side, so either fly high or fly very close to the terrain to avoid the strong headwinds and downwash. I prefer the safer option, but as you can see from this pilot, you lose less height by flying close to the terrain. This area can be quite windy and generally turbulent, so stay focused. You can set your turn point over this summit for your 150 km flight. For 180 we fly a little farther north. For 200 km you have to cross to these slopes and fly even further north. This is the Anser Manuevo crossing. Remember that there is a restricted airspace ahead of us, so plan your route accordingly. The turn point is set and we fly back to the takeoff. The cloud base is still quite low. When it's higher you can fly straight over the ridge. I once flew straight for half an hour, just holding my altitude and even climbing a bit. Now my camera turned off here because of it was too hot in the air, so I'll show you this area from another flight. The same applies here as before. You can fly back over this area, but be aware of the narrow windy valley with no landings. The safer option is the middle ridge, which is what I chose here. Don't cross too low, because on the other side you'll hit a power line on the slopes. If you fly to the middle ridge, you can continue right from here, because the cloud base at this time is usually much higher than it was 2 hours ago. If you fly the higher terrain, you will have to reach the end of the valley first. Now back to the original flight. We reached the strange ridge with the non-working sunny slopes again. From here you can fly 3 different lines. The faster line is to follow the terrain to the right. Only do this if the cloud base is high enough, because you have to get over these high peaks back to the windward side. The classic option is to fly to the summit where we started our crossing 2 hours ago. The air can be pretty rough here, so stay focused. The third line is a bit in between. Fly to this mountain with a reliable thermal. It's also quite risky because you have to make sure you can make it to the windward side. See, there is a power line and this whole area can be quite sinky due to the lee side of the strong thermals. We continue south towards Roldanillo. Try not to sink too low, it will slow you down a lot. We are back to the tricky crossing, but this time we are flying it in the opposite direction. But the same rule applies: make as much height as possible, because the other side will be difficult if you arrive too low. There are 2 power lines to avoid and no landings here, so fly high instead. You should be over Roldanillo around noon, maybe 30 minutes later. If it's already 1 PM, you are too late and too slow, so consider changing your plans and getting out of the mountains, because the El Pacifico wind is about to enter the region. We are approaching another important location. This is the town of Bolivar, and this place is maybe the most rough in the whole region. Even the best pilots in the world and the Colombian natives are a little afraid of this place. Don't fly low here, the air down there is violent, you don't want to get into trouble. There is an antenna here, and probably the strongest thermal in the whole region is right above it, causing a lot of nasty air movement. Also, this is the time when the El Pacifico west wind is starting to move into the region, and this area is one of the first to get hit. So this is going to be a massive lee side rotor in addition to the rough thermal. And to make it even more exciting, this whole area is quite windy, with a lot of drifting and bending thermals. So, full concentration. Oh, and I almost forgot. Forgot what? Right, the power line here on the slopes. The solution here is either gain a lot of altitude before the crossing or look for a thermal over this hill. The thermal will be rough and windy, but we need it. Great, I got it, so I can make the crossing safely. This is the antenna with the strongest thermal of the Valle del Cauca. You can use it if you want some spicy emotions or if you need to speed up your flight a bit. At this point, always look to the right. See those clouds falling down the slopes in the distance? El Pacifico is here. If you see a lot of blue sky here, beware, the strong wind has arrived. The area to the south, where we are heading, is a bit more sheltered, so it will last a bit longer. But in general, if you see the clouds coming down the slopes and the blue sky, it's time to be very careful and think about leaving the mountains. This is another tricky area. The El Pacifico can start to sneak down to the east, so it can push the thermals and create sink areas down at these slopes. Try to stay as high as possible. There are no landings in this area, so we'll have to glide down a lot to get to a safe landing and cross you guessed it, a power line. From here you have two options, follow this flat ridge or fly close to the higher terrain here. Make your choice depending on the cloud base and your risk management. I usually fly over the ridge first, get some altitude and then cross to the other side. This is the town of Trujillo. If you want to fly 150 kilometers, this is your turn point. We fly further south. Some pilots fly back there, but it's too scary for me, so I prefer to fly over this hill. It usually provides strong thermals, but there is a lot of wind down there. Also, the landing options in this whole area are golden, as you can see. Get to cloud base and we proceed directly into the jungle. Stay extremely focused in this area. There are no roads or even trails here, so landing in a tree will be the adventure of your life. We set our southern turn point here and fly back northeast to reach the Valle del Cauca. I usually fly back to this hill first, make it to cloud base and get out of this area. By this time you should start to feel a little bit of tailwind here as well. Say hello to El Pacifico. This place is called Rio Frio and the slopes here work really well, even very low. So remember this place, if you lose a lot of altitude, try these slopes. There is some conflicting information about the maximum altitude allowed in Valle del Cauca, but from what I know, you can climb up to 6,500 feet above ground over the flat valley. That's about 2,900 meters MSL. It's okay to climb higher over the mountains and hills, but please check this information yourself, don't rely on this video. I'm lucky to be very high and can start the crossing of Valle del Cauca. Try to climb above 2600 meters MSL before you start the crossing. 2800 is even better. Also try to cross the valley in a group of pilots, not alone. This crossing is more like flying flatlands, where you have to look for thermals. If you are an experienced flatland pilot, this may be easy for you, but for me it's a bit of a gamble every time I cross the valley, especially if there are no clouds. Fortunately, there are some some nice clouds today and they show me where to look for updrafts. I crossed the valley comfortably high without losing too much time in the weak thermals. That's great. This place is called Buga la Grande and there's a very delicious thermal over a sugarcane processing plant. Smells really sweet. After crossing the Valle del Cauca, try to get to these hills. They produce strong thermals, so they will save you if you are low. Watch your altitude though, because you don't want to land in the wild terrain. As you can see, we are getting to the cloud base easily and that's how it usually works here. Our next destination is a town named Sevilla. Again, you have two options. You can continue along the valley and then turn right towards Sevilla. It's safe but a bit slower. The second option is to fly directly east. It's faster but a bit more challenging. Some pilots even fly a direct line, but that means finding thermals over flat terrain, and I'm just not good at that. So I fly to this ridge. Those of you who follow my channel may recognize this area. Yes, it's the place where I had to save my flight by patiently working a weak thermal. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put the link in the description. I'm going to skip the boring part of the low save, so let's just pretend I climbed fast here, but you probably noticed that my average XC speed dropped significantly. Anyway, we move on to the slopes. They usually work very well even at this time. Keep in mind that the thermals stop working pretty early here because we're almost at the equator. For now, the clouds look nice and we continue towards Sevilla. If you want to fly 200 kilometers, you have to turn right here and fly into the jungle again. No landings, full concentration. We're not going to do that now. We're flying directly to Sevilla. This whole place here near Sevilla is quite tricky. Sometimes it's very difficult to find thermals when you are below a certain altitude. Many pilots land here and have a long way to go back to Roldanillo. I have landed here a few times too, but today the slopes are working great and I'm not too low, so I can get up easily. This is Sevilla. Look how beautiful the view is. If you can, get to the cloud base. Don't be fooled by the clouds like those. The thermals will probably look like this, and there's a good chance you won't catch them, but you'll sink instead. So welcome to a landing on the plateau here, because you won't make it back against the wind. But from here on, you will need every single meter of altitude you can get. We are starting our last leg of the triangle and it's perhaps the most challenging. This whole area is wilderness. There's often no cell coverage and in many places there are no roads or trails. Avoid landing here. Getting back to civilization will be really hard. Been there, done that. If you see that you can't get any lift, fly back south instead, back to the road. You can at least hitchhike or call a cab from there. Also note that the clouds are starting to disappear everywhere. The sky over the valley is already completely blue and there are only a few strong thermals left. Try to catch the thermals before they disappear completely. It's great if you can fly in a group here, it increases your chances of success. We're climbing in the last thermal of this flight, so I'm staying in the climb as long as I can, even getting a little higher than cloud base. From here all we can do is glide down as far as it will go. Make sure you don't end up in the wilderness, and if you get too low, find the road on the right and follow it. Now, I cannot just end this flight without saying it again, so here we are. When flying over these fields, be aware of the power line that crosses them. It can limit your landing options. We are back to the town of Zarzal. That's great. It's not always possible to get even here. If you want to be on the safe side, choose a large field near Zarzal to land. But Do not land inside the military base in Sarsal. You will have big problems with the soldiers and their machine guns. The El Pacifico wind will not be too strong here. With every meter you fly closer to Roldanillo, the wind gets stronger and stronger. The wind is usually so strong in Roldanillo at this time that you will fly backwards. I have a video of my landings in strong wind here. I'll put the link in the description. So this is my landing field and I complete this beautiful 185 km FAI triangle. You probably noticed that the flight was quite challenging. Lots of tricky spots, power lines, difficult areas. Yes, you are right, it's not an easy flight, but that's what makes this flight so interesting. With every attempt you get new challenges, so it's a great way to learn in real and demanding conditions. I wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but if you already have some XC experience, trust me, you will love the challenges and be proud of yourself every time you solve them. Stay safe though, keep your risk management up to date. Now, as I promised, at the end of our flight, let's talk about 5 things that will make your Colombian experience better. Yeah, I know, boring stuff, but this is exactly where you need to apply your own risk management. Don't blindly follow other pilots because they fly somewhere. Manage your risks. Land early if you lose concentration or conditions seem overwhelming. Valle del Cauca is safe as long as you consistently apply your own risk management. Forget about it. It just doesn't work here. You can only rely on thermals. Here, look, this is one of the best pilots trying to fly the slope lift close to the terrain. You see, it doesn't work, the pilot only loses altitude. I start lower but arrive much higher thanks to a good thermal line. Prefer to fly thermal lines instead of slope lift in Colombia. Although the air is completely renewed every day by the El Pacifico wind, it's still quite humid here, so there will be a lot of clouds. Please, don't fly in the clouds. Many pilots do this in Colombia, but it makes it dangerous for everyone. Yes, sometimes it happens that you hit the edge of the cloud, that's not so bad. But don't fly directly into the clouds on purpose and know how to escape. Because the air is so humid, the rain clouds or thunderstorms can develop very quickly. Always be aware of the conditions. When the clouds start to explode and get really high, it's time to land. Many pilots will continue to fly, but that's their risk management, not yours. Finally, some positive things. I truly believe that without the birds we could probably only go half the distance we do now. The birds are everywhere, there are so many of them and they really show you where the climb is. Just keep your eyes open. My last hint is about equipment. If you want to fly a big triangle 160 km and more, you need a fast wing, and also be confident with it in turbulent air. We don't have too much working height in Valle del Cauca and many places are quite windy, so a good glide at high speed is crucial for really big flights. However, a 150 km FAI is also possible on an ENB wing. Wow, that's a lot of stuff in this video, right? I hope it was not too boring and a bit helpful for you. I also hope you didn't get confused or insecure about flying in Roldanillo. Everything I have described here is my personal perception, so your impressions may be different. Just come and try it yourself. Maybe see you there. Check out my Telegram group if you have any questions. And as always, fly safe and see you in the next story.